I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We have a jam-packed show for you tonight, including your feedback on our story from last night involving the woman renting the rundown mobile home in Vancouver. You are definitely all kinds of fired up over that one. But first, we're going to start with a story about a yoga center that offers spiritual retreats here in Portland. Some women say the retreats were more like a nightmare. And that's our big story tonight. The longtime self-acclaimed spiritual leader at the Center for All This is a man named Michael Shoemaker. He's now named in a federal lawsuit by two women who say they went to his center seeking enlightenment, but what they found was sexual assault. Thomas Schultz spoke with several women who claimed that they were assaulted while at the Movement Center. But first, a warning for viewers, this story does contain descriptions of sexual assault.
It gave me a lot of relief to know that it wasn't all in my head.
For years, Ruth Graham lived here at what used to be the Movement Center in the Kerns neighborhood in Portland, a place marketed as a yoga center offering spiritual retreats and meditation. It was also a community where people like Graham lived. Now, 11 years after leaving the center, Graham is still processing what happened.
I was I'm pretty sure, roofied and trafficked to a...
Graham says she was then raped by a visiting spiritual teacher.
But that wasn't the only sexual assault that happened.
She says she was also groped by the leader of the Movement Center, J. Michael Shoemaker.
What happened to me was very personal, so I didn't know that it was a whole system.
A system that several women tell us has gone on for decades. Now, two women are bringing a civil lawsuit against Shoemaker in hopes for justice for them and others. Last summer, the lawsuit was filed in federal court, alleging a woman who goes by the initials GM was groomed, trafficked, and repeatedly sexually assaulted by Shoemaker. Another woman who recently joined the suit goes by the initials DT and claims Shoemaker recruited and trafficked young women for decades.
And allowing our creative energy to flow.
The lawsuit is just the latest accusation against Shoemaker, who describes himself as a spiritual teacher and accomplished practitioner of meditation. Shoemaker denied a request for an interview, though in a statement, his lawyer says he'll explain how relationships were consensual at trial. The Movement Center, which closed in Portland in 2020, was funded by dozens of members who lived in the home with Shoemaker. Many worked for free in an assortment of roles like cooking and tending to the grounds. But people familiar with the center also tell KGW abuse was common.
She was brutalized by them.
Jane Lyons says her daughter lived at the center from 2016 to 2019 and was sexually assaulted while there. Before joining the center, Lyons says her daughter was a nursing assistant in Colorado with plans to get her nursing degree. She had an interest in Buddhism and spirituality and planned to visit the Movement Center for a weekend, but then suddenly decided to move to Portland and join the center. Her mother says she was love-bombed by Shoemaker, a term psychologists use to describe a showering of attention, usually with the intent to manipulate a person and create a fast bond.
She had that vacant look in her eyes, that $1 million smile on her face, that everything was wonderful. And she couldn't take her nursing boards.
Over time, Lyons says the relationship changed. Shoemaker pulled her daughter closer. Eventually, he raped and choked her.
She didn't talk for a while after she got accosted.
Thomas Harberts was living at the Movement Center when the alleged assault happened. He says Lyons' daughter was strangled to the point that she lost consciousness. When Lyons went to the Movement Center, she was told conflicting stories about what happened.
And in the morning, after I kind of roamed around the halls looking for my daughter, I found her. She was partially clad. She was peeing on towels. She was totally collapsed, couldn't walk.
3 other women told KGW they were also sexually assaulted by Shoemaker. One, who lived at the center from 2017 to 2019 and preferred to stay anonymous, sent us a text saying, "He strangled me whenever he felt like it, and he strangled me until I passed out. He strangled me countless times while I was showering in my bathroom."
I would love to see him go to prison.
Shoemaker has never faced criminal charges related to any of these accusations. He says the Movement Center is a place of spiritual growth and compassion, though his behavior allegedly stretches decades. 20 years ago, the Oregonian reported on 11 women who said Shoemaker had had sex with them, many of whom said it was non-consensual. They described the encounters as damaging, but another woman alleges Shoemaker's behavior began long before he moved to Portland.
The reason I came forward after all this time is hoping I can add something to the material needed to stop him.
Carolyn says she was living in Bloomington, Indiana in the early 1970s when she was raped by Shoemaker. She was 24 and worked in the Dow, a restaurant co-founded by Shoemaker. Carolyn says she lived in a commune with others where they practiced meditation and yoga. One day, Shoemaker asked her to come to the meditation room, where she thought he was going to teach her a breathing exercise. Instead, Carolyn says he raped her.
I don't remember the physical part. It just scared me, stunned me, shocked, because I thought this was a safe place.
Afterwards, she says Shoemaker told her that if she told anyone, she would lose the spiritual gift he gave her. Now she plans to testify against him in the pending lawsuit.
I want him to be held accountable for what he is and has done.
Thomas joins me now. And okay, what do we know about what's happening on the coast?
Yeah, so former members tell us that it's actually still going on with the Movement Center down there. Now, Shoemaker says he's retired. We reached out to the police chief of Gold Beach. He was aware Shoemaker was there, but he wasn't sure exactly what he or the people were doing there. We also reached out to the state representative in that area. They were completely unaware that this was going on at all.
Well, now a lot of people are going to know. The first woman in your story, is she part of that lawsuit?
So Ruth plans to testify in this lawsuit. Now, the reason she couldn't be a part of it and plaintiff in it is because her statute of limitations are up. She was there around 2013 was when she finally left the center of the statute of limitations for sexual assault. The attorney tells us in Oregon, 5 to 7 years. So statute of limitations up, but she will testify.
And all the interviews you had, there was a lot of pretty powerful allegations. Why haven't there not been criminal charges here?
Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One reason is former members tell us that Shoemaker often has people sign non-disclosure agreements, and once they sign those agreements, then they're either can't or aren't willing to go and do prosecution route or another route possible. Now, another reason for that is just simply that people are still kind of indoctrinated in what's going on there. So Jane Lyons, the mother that you saw in the story, she filed a police report, though her daughter at the time didn't want to press any charges.
And without that cooperation, it gets a lot harder. Okay, interesting stuff, Thomas. Appreciate it. Moving on now, let's get to your response to the story we ran last night, and the amount of feedback we got from you was really impressive. It was about a woman living in awful conditions in a mobile home that she's renting. You lit up our phone line and flooded our email inbox, and I thank you for that. It shows that you really do care. In case you missed it, you should check it out after the show. Watch it anytime on our KGW YouTube page. Kyla Boshi introduced us to a woman named Casey Jewell. She's a renter in a trailer park in Vancouver, and her mobile home is in awful condition. There's holes in the roof, the toilet's broken, the drain in the tub spills right out onto the ground. When Kyle visited in January, there was no running water. The outrage is this. Casey's paying $925 a month for rent, and because she fell behind during COVID, the owner is not required to fix a single thing. You heard that right. The landlord doesn't have to make the property habitable. That's because of a loophole in Washington state law that says the landlord does not have to make even basic repairs if the renter is behind on the rent. Kyle also showed us the landlords are Michael and Denise Werner. He found out they own a $1.8 million home on the Columbia River and a pair of mansions in Arizona, one of which is on the market for $7.4 million. By the way, they did not respond to our questions, even though we reached out several different ways. So, yes, there is quite a lot to be upset about in that story, and many of you are. Here's just a sample. Donna writes in to say, not only should the landlord be providing basic services and maintenance, but someone this unethical should not have the right to own rental properties. I don't feel he deserves to have this power over others. Many of you are outraged by the conditions in that mobile home.
Nobody should have to live like that in that mobile home. Them owners of that property need to pull that mobile home out and put another one in there. She should not even have to pay rent and living in those conditions. This is ridiculous.
I feel that they ought to make the owners live there for 1 month and then recheck with the owners on what they want to do.
Thanks for those comments. Jay wrote in to add, comparing the properties of the millionaire Werners live in to the miserable trailer that they have the nerve to rent out makes me wish the Werners could have a learning experience. If only the Werners could be forced to spend a week in that leaky, moldy trailer without a toilet and running water. Calling their renters trash is so wrong. Thousands of you watched the story on YouTube. We do look at your comments over there. Thanks for leaving them. Rebecca is one of many who felt compelled to write, saying, Washington government should be ashamed that they allow this. How can they allow landlords to treat humans like this? How can they increase rent when the home is dilapidated? Yeah, I forgot to tell you that part. Casey's rent was $9.25 a month. Now it's going up to $9.50. And yes, it's totally legal under that loophole in Washington state law. There is a bill in Washington's legislature that might change that, but it's unclear if it'll pass. As part of the feedback from last night, it's clear several of you who are watching are landlords yourselves. Some wanted to add a bit of context. Ann wrote in to say, the Werners are a good example of what many tenants think landlords are, and they give all of us a bad reputation. However, I can also understand the exception in the Washington law. There have been instances where tenants have trashed the property and then stopped paying rent, claiming that it's uninhabitable so they don't have to pay rent. Finally, many of you asked how you can help. Here's a message from Kelly. Is there a GoFundMe way to assist Casey? How brave of her to come forward. Well, yes, Kelly, there is a GoFundMe. Thanks for asking. Thanks to all of you who responded through email, voicemail, with messages on YouTube and everywhere else. And to answer your question, there is definitely a GoFundMe page. It's been set up by the girlfriend of Casey's son, so KGW has no control over it. I took this screenshot from earlier today. Already $5,400 have come in to help her out. That does not surprise me. You're a very generous bunch. If you want to take part and donate, you'll find a link to the GoFundMe page at kgw.com as part of Kyle's print story there. It's about halfway down the story. Thanks again for all your comments and concern. I love that I can have this conversation with you like this. I really think it's what makes our news show different than anything else you'll find in the country. Please keep us going. Tell your friends about us. Moving on, the city of Portland now has an employee whose entire job is to handle the homeless crisis, a new director of homelessness. Coming up, we're going to meet her and hear the experience she brings to the job and why she thinks the federal government needs to step in to help. The city of Portland has taken a bold step to keep control of its efforts to deal with the homeless crisis. They've created a brand new position with a salary of $185,000 for a director of what they're calling emergency humanitarian operations. So what's that mean? Well, according to the job posting, they'll be in charge of managing the city's homeless services. That includes everything from development and construction of campsites to overseeing finance and logistics and external affairs and communications and a laundry list of other functions involving homelessness. They'll also guide the city's overall homeless strategy and related activities, and there's a whole lot more in that job description. The position was created last summer, and in September, they hired the new director. Her name is Brandy Westerman. She used to be a senior director of program performance for Mercy Corps. That's an international relief organization that's headquartered right here in Portland. She designed, managed, and evaluated big programs and agency-wide initiatives for Mercy Corps, and I'm told by insiders that part of the value the city liked about her skill set was her ability to oversee large and complex contracts. We recently had the chance to ask her how her new job will benefit from the old job.
So at Mercy Corps and other NGOs, I dealt with displaced populations, which is in some ways kind of a different set of words to mean the same thing, right? It's people who through some traumatic experience have lost their homes, they've been separated from their communities, and they're needing to heal from the traumas that they've experienced and find stability in a new situation. So there's a lot of parallels and similarities. There's also a lot of differences. And that's true as well from any displaced population. The displaced populations in Bangladesh are going to be very different than the displaced populations in Syria. So everybody who has really experienced that displacement sort of deserves a special focus and look at what are those circumstances that have brought them there and what are their needs to move forward successfully with their lives.
And despite that broad job description that she'll be in charge of pretty much everything homelessness related for the city, Westerman says actually she's focused on the homeless folks once they are in the shelters and how they're moved through and into housing. So our Blair Best asked how Westerman plans to keep those people in housing.
It's a great question and one that I've been investigating and learning a lot. Fortunately, in the Portland area, we have a number of nonprofit organizations that have been working to answer that question and work really closely with folks who have moved into housing to provide those supports. One of our partners, All Good Northwest, has been really working hard on that housing success and housing stability side. So they both manage shelters for us, but they also work with people after they've moved on, and a number of other nonprofits are doing that as well. I think continuing to invest in permanent supportive housing is an essential part of kind of achieving that level of success.
I got to say, we're going to kind of call that a pivot. The question was, how do you keep them in permanent housing? And the answer was, I've been learning a lot, and one of our nonprofits does a really great job at that. Finally, Blair asked if Westerman thinks the federal government should be involved with helping with Portland's crisis, since many of the homeless folks on our streets seem to be from somewhere else.
I would kind of approach it from the angle of this is not a Portland crisis alone. This is a crisis that we're seeing play out in different ways across the entire United States. And yes, the West Coast has a very visible challenge ahead of us with homelessness, but it's not unique to this area. So absolutely we need the federal government's support in successfully addressing the crisis, both on the prevention side as well as alleviating the suffering that we see now.
And then finally, there's sort of a structural story behind this story as well. The county is technically supposed to be in charge of all social services, which includes homelessness. That's what the Joint Office of Homeless Services is all about, at least in theory. But a while ago, the city of Portland decided it could not count on the county to do all that the city felt was needed, and so it started creating things like those tiny villages and the outdoor camps to help with the homeless problem themselves. Up until now, that's been run out of the mayor's office. By creating this director position and officially putting her in charge of all things involving city efforts for the homeless, the city is trying to protect what it has created and keep continuity through the changeover, what's going to happen with the new form of government at the end of this year. So now you know the story behind the story. When we come back, a story you're not going to want to miss. It's about a sourdough starter that's 177 years old. I kid you not. It dates back to a family who came to Oregon on the Oregon Trail, and now that same sourdough starter is going all over the country because of some social media fame. Right now, a group of people are trying to keep a historic piece of sourdough starter alive. Now, if you're not aware, sourdough starter is an active colony of wild yeast and bacteria used to make bread. A small amount is added to the bread dough to make it rise. This particular starter dates way back to the Oregon Trail and a man from Eastern Oregon. Carl T. Griffith was from Burns. He went to the University of Oregon and practiced law in Oregon, but he was also a fanatic in a good way when it came to sourdough starter. He gave it to anyone who asked. He'd also mail it to anyone who sent him a self-addressed stamped envelope. The starter came west in 1847 with one of Carl's ancestors who traveled the Oregon Trail to Oregon. Carl died in 2000 at the age of 80, but a group of people are keeping his sourdough starter and his memory alive, and they've just received a huge boost after their website went viral on TikTok. The whole process is handled by a woman who's now in Greeley, Colorado.
And this is me drying about 3 trays of fresh sourdough starter. To preserve this particular sourdough and make it available so it doesn't disappear. I'm Mary Buckingham. I'm the mailbox keeper for the 1847 Oregon Trail Sourdough Preservation Society. That job is that I set up a post office box where we receive the requests. I go and pick them up and process the envelopes and get them ready to be filled. It's just a starter, and it's just about a teaspoon of ground dried sourdough starter. I'm processing these thousands of sourdough starter requests we have suddenly fallen upon us since a TikTok video on January 20th. Let's see, last week we had 1,355, not including a couple hundred small envelopes I haven't even processed yet. I had no idea, absolutely no idea. In the past we've had huge newspaper like the New York Times and the Chicago Tribune mention us in a sourdough article, and we got a huge influx. But we're talking, $350 a week, not $1,400. In the last 3 weeks, we have gotten a volume that we normally get in a whole year, and we're only 2 people doing this. Now it's every day, 8 to 10 hours a day, no breaks. Well, this is going on 3 weeks now. I've just had to stop everything. It's crazy. These are last week's collection. And with this stuff, I'm finding out there's all kinds of towns and whatnot I never knew existed. People who donate to us, which is the only way we can keep doing this, I have to count, and then we print up a thank you letter for them and put that in. These are the envelopes that are ready to be mailed. I would like this to calm down to a more manageable amount because I do have other things to do. Well, I hope they enjoy the experience of using sourdough. You can grow it and share it. All you have to do is follow the instructions on our website to revive it, and then you can share it endlessly.
I almost feel bad about giving them more publicity, but you know what? It's pretty cool. And if you want to get your hands on some sourdough starter, that website is carlsfriends.net. carlsfriends.net. And yes, it looks like it was created in the 90s, the website I mean. They say right now they're slammed with requests. It might take a while for you to get yours, so please be patient and then enjoy. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. We'll see you tomorrow night right here at 6:30.